Welcome, 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 everyone, to another episode of the Option Menu Crew podcast. Your crew today is myself, Ryan,
I'm Ed, and happy to be here as always.
and this is episode 29. Today, we're going to be talking about continuing our series of platform-specific episodes. Last week's episode was, or not last week's, we are a bi-weekly podcast every on Saturdays. Just for those who don't know, you can subscribe on YouTube, on the Option Menu Crew channel, or we're also available on a bunch of podcast platforms now. So that's relatively new information. So just putting out there. Download links are in the YouTube video for all the different platforms. And then, of course, we appreciate if you're subscribing or just checking back in and listening to our episodes. So before we get started, we just want to do a little bit of housekeeping because things got a little weird. So as I said, the previous episode was about Nintendo, and unfortunately, the Nintendo Switch OLED announcement was done after the recording. So just in case people are new listeners and are a little confused what happened, so we recorded our episode, we talked a lot about the Switch Pro, and we're speculating, and then the next week, Nintendo announces the Switch OLED model. So we gave our thoughts there, and so you should just listen to it in that order. And that's why when we do our Reacts episodes, we do them like right away and try to get them out to be a little more topical for that news. The reacts are very few and far between, but we do plan on occasionally doing more. So just letting people know there, and then also we may have addendums also for PlayStation, but if they do anything else, we did watch the previous State of Play, so that we'll discuss that a little bit on this episode. And then also we're aware of Valve's Steam Deck announcement. That won't so much factor into this conversation, but we will get into it more when we talk about the PC platform, and probably a little bit in Xbox, and a little bit in this episode. We're going to talk about Sony's history with handhelds, so it will be a bit relevant to this conversation. But we're just getting that out of the way. So just like with our previous Nintendo episode, we're going to start off with just a, our background history with Sony and PlayStation, more specifically PlayStation, as that's owned by Sony. And Sony is a corporation with a bunch of different aspects to it. So Ed, why don't you start this time and just go over a little bit of your background with like what PlayStation consoles you've played, platforms you've played, and some of your favorite games.
So, I think I mentioned on the Nintendo episode that my very first console was the handheld Game Boy Advance, but my first home console was the PlayStation 2, and I have a ton of good memories from that. It's a good time in your life when you're really starting to go into video games because everything is new and novel. Especially that PS2 era had a ton of unique franchises, very experimental in a lot of different ways. We get that now with indie games, but not as much as we did with AAA games and regular publishers like we did in PlayStation 2. I was a huge fan and still am of Ratchet and Clank. I liked the old God of War games. Played a ton of JRPGs on PS2. So I could go on and on about all the great memories I have from PS2, but it ranks up there as one of the best consoles I've ever had, in my opinion. I got into the PlayStation 3 a little late in the game. I think I came in at about when they were putting out the slim version, the middle revision.
Mm.
And for a while in the eighth generation, I started out with the Xbox One, and it's funny, the reason I did that was because Insomniac's game Sunset Overdrive came out on Xbox One. So I guess I followed my favorite PlayStation developer to
Oh, I see.
Xbox One.
I see.
Yeah, and then later I ended up getting the PlayStation 4 when the slim version was on a sale for Black Friday, and I've since discovered a ton of franchises on PlayStation that I wouldn't have had the option to play if I only had the Xbox. So, now with the PlayStation 5 coming out, I'm kind of firmly back in that camp. Although I remain open to the option of getting an Xbox. Um, it's not really a matter of I don't have the resources to get all these systems. It's almost a matter of like, do I split my time? There's so many games out. It's you really have to be selective about what you choose to play. But I would put PlayStation up there as one of my, you know, I probably spend more time playing my PlayStation than anything else. Even though I like my Switch, I a lot of the games I play are PlayStation exclusives. And I guess I didn't mention the handhelds, but I did have a PSP. I did have a PS Vita. I don't have either of those anymore, but I enjoyed those while I had them, and they were, Sony always makes good hardware. They were great pieces of hardware. The software support wasn't there, especially for the wasn't always there, especially for the Vita. But I feel like Sony hardware is usually pretty good. Even when they do a little weird stuff with the PlayStation 3, like the original PlayStation 3, it was good hardware. It was just weirdly designed in some ways, like with the cell processor, and very expensive at the time, but it certainly pushed the envelope. What about you? You probably have a little longer history with the PlayStation than I do.
Yeah, a slightly longer history. Um, I do start with the PlayStation 1, and I did get it, and I think I might have mentioned this story before, but I my first PlayStation 1 game was Final Fantasy 7, and I think I got it like the Christmas of the same year that the game came out. Um, I remember seeing Final Fantasy 7 at a friend's house at the time when I was a kid, and seeing that game and go and just like weirded out by like the menus and stuff, and I just thought it was too complicated for me, so I never thought I'd be into it. But I remember then playing Super Mario RPG on Super Nintendo and understanding what coming to an understanding of what RPGs are. And then when I was like, oh, someone or reading the Game Pro magazines or something like that at the time, um, said like, hey, these are RPGs, these are role playing games, and that's like how they work. I'm like, oh. So then I immediately wanted Final Fantasy VII. I think my mom rented Blockbuster. Yes, definitely. She rented a PlayStation 1 for me from there, and I tried it for the first time. I tried Mega Man 8 for the first time. Learned painfully why you need memory cards for those systems, and got myself my own memory card to start saving data in that. And then for Christmas later that year, I ended up getting PlayStation 1 with Final Fantasy 7. So I've had PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PS4. I have a PS5 currently. I got that with the through the direct pre-order at the beginning of launch. I was very lucky. And I did have a PSP and I did have a Vita. I haven't acquired them all brand new based on the situation. So, like I said, PlayStation 1 was a Christmas present for me. I had that until the thing basically broke. PlayStation 2, I was saving up to buy that system because that was notoriously expensive at the time because it was first time for the DVD technologies and it was selling out. And so I just was like, I want to save up and buy it. Then I got lucky and, but, I'd saved the money. My dad had saw how much effort I was putting into it, and he ended up buying me or paying for the other half of it. I forget at this point, but yeah, he surprised me and he bought it. Um, and then I used the money to, of course, buy more games and accessories that I had saved up. PlayStation 3, I waited on for a long time because that was super expensive. I ended up getting that used, a 60 gigabyte PlayStation 3 for for $500, and someone was just getting rid of theirs. They needed the money, so they gave me that plus like 2 or 3 controllers, all the cables, and like 20 some games they didn't need. So I got a really good deal when it came to that used. PlayStation 4 I bought brand new. I did that day one, and then I eventually got the PS4 Pro. I also pre-ordered for that for launch, and then like I said, for the PS5 I got lucky and did that. PSP, I didn't really want anything on the PSP except for Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep and Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, and then eventually Dissidia Final Fantasy. So those are pretty much the games I got on PSP. And funny enough, because I'm a huge fan of like the Forest Green, they actually made a Forest Green PSP as a special edition for Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. So when I saw that, and it didn't have any extra decals, it was just that color, and it came with the game with Peace Walker. So I pre-ordered that at GameStop, and that was how I got my PSP. And it was also funny because I went in to go pick it up, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" He's like, "Dude, you're the only one who pre-ordered this thing, so here you go." And I'm just like, "Fantastic!" I'm not saying he got it for free. I was just like so shocked that no one else like pre-ordered that system. I still have that PSP in the drawer. I did remove the battery before it fully exploded, but it wasn't inflated and it did pop the door. Oh, the screen did end up getting cracked at one point when I took it on a camping trip, and I did have to the inner screen, not the like plastic on the outside. So I did actually do a manual repair of my PSP and replace the screen. So that was one of the few times I've ever modded a system in some way. And then I also ended up I didn't buy Vita new. I believe my friend had the white PlayStation Vita original OLED version, and they were just planning on getting rid of it. They're like, yeah, it's kind of neat, but it's nothing's grabbing them. So I'm like, all right, well, there's a couple games for me. I'll buy it off you. And he's like, here you go. And I specifically wanted the white one over the black one because of it being a handheld and being glossy finish. And the white just doesn't reflect the fingerprints the same way the black one would. So I wanted the white one so it looked a little cleaner when I was playing it, despite the fact that the black would have meshed better with the OLED screen for stuff. But honestly, it really didn't matter. Game wise, funny enough, it isn't until recently that I've really started to appreciate Sony like first party games. More so, it was the third party exclusives that really kept me going or kept me attached to PlayStation. The Final Fantasies, Kingdom Hearts was really exclusive to, or the main Kingdom Hearts franchises were exclusive to PlayStation platforms for the longest time. I had dabbled in Crash Bandicoot. I had dabbled in Medieval. Who hasn't played the demo discs? I would play Street Fighter and fighting games and Mortal Kombat. Like PlayStation for the longest time was like my, and those weren't exactly exclusives, but they were probably like the superior versions at the time. On top of, I was gonna say Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 through 4. I definitely played a ton on PlayStation 1. Trying to think what else. Yeah, it played Mega Man 8, which was a ton of fun. Mega Man X 4 through 8, because that 4, 5, and 6 are on PlayStation 1, and then 7 and 8 are on PlayStation 2. Yeah. So, yeah, it was basically a bunch of the third-party games, and it isn't until now, like I didn't play Infamous on PlayStation 3. It just, for some reason, it wasn't my preferred one. Also, I didn't have a PlayStation 3 for the longest time, so I really didn't delve into it. And then eventually, I played Second Son on PlayStation 4. I played Second Son on PlayStation 5 because I was able to claim the game, I think, through like PS Plus or PS Now, and then it had an unlocked frame rate, so I was able to play it at 60 on PS5, and that was great. Play with HDR and 60 FPS maximum performance mode, so that was fun. But yeah, I'm excited to play Ratchet and Clank, the remake of the first game, and then Rift Apart in the near future. I'm trying to think if there's any other notable PlayStation. I'm sure that I'll think of more stuff. Oh yeah, like PSP. PSP I mentioned was the Final Fantasies and Kingdom Hearts game. For the Vita, Gravity Rush 1, which I bought the remaster on PlayStation 4, and I bought Gravity Rush 2 also when that came out on PlayStation 4. I really hope Gravity Rush 2 gets patched for the PS5 to unlock its frame rate. It seems like that one might be one of the ones that gets left behind, but then again, who knows? Maybe they'll release a dual collection of the two later on, and that will be like a definitive patched Gravity Rush version. Or maybe they'll even do a third game later. Although it seems like Japan Studios, or whichever studio, I think it was Japan Studios, was responsible for Gravity Rush, Gravity Days in Japan. Might they might not do that. I'm not sure, but yeah, like Horizon Zero Dawn, I love. Last of Us is great. I played seconds. What was the other first party? I said Ratchet and Clank. Astrobot, the pack-in for PlayStation 5 was actually really cool. I was surprisingly enjoyed that because I don't really play platformers anymore. But of course, I was going to give the gimmick packing game a try on my brand new console, and I actually liked it a lot. It was a way better built than I thought it was. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And then just to kind of round it out, I have not played the PlayStation VR, though people may recall from previous episodes me talking up the Oculus Quest 2 for a bit. So I am looking forward to seeing what Sony does with the PlayStation 5 or PlayStation VR 2. I was going to say PS5 VR or PSVR 2. I'm not sure. So let's get that out of the way right here because we haven't really I don't think we have much to say about it. Mike might have had a little bit more to say, but we haven't seen much either, other than on that most recent state of play. PlayStation announced that Moss 2, a sequel to Moss, is coming to PlayStation VR, but we don't really have any other details. Oh, we've seen the controller. We know what the new controller looks like, but we have no idea what the headset looks like for the next PSVR. So, Ed, you recently had a chance to try out my Oculus Quest 2 and give VR a little bit of a try. So, do you have any thoughts on what are your thoughts currently on PlayStation going back in for their second dip of VR, and just based on what you've experienced, do you feel like maybe now you might want to check it out, or just where's your head at?
I I feel like a few things would have to happen with the PSVR 2 for me to want to check it out. One thing I thought was good about the Oculus Quest 2 was the controller. I thought it's really well done. The Move controller on the PSVR leaves something to be desired. But the Quest 2 definitely gets it right. From it fits in your hand well. The buttons are all placed well. With the the trigger buttons and the thumbsticks. I mean, it all is well fitted to your hand. Um, and it doesn't rely on the camera like PSVR or the PlayStation Move does.
Hmm.
But I don't know if I remember what Sony showed for the PSVR controller. Was it similar to what the Quest 2 has?
Yeah, it's quite similar. You could Google the
That
images.
that's probably the way to go then.
It loo-
That's the right competitor to imitate.
it looks like it's in between the Quest 2 controller and the Valve Index controllers. So something in between there. Um, what I was gonna mention is, yeah. So I guess they've said that the PSVR 2 is not going to need additional cameras, which is great. So they're already doing that. It still sounds like it's going to be tethered to the console through just one cable now, which is great. USB-C is amazing. So we'll see that. But yeah, now, we've both experienced the Quest 2. So how do you feel? Do you think Sony might actually allow the headset to work independently of a PlayStation, so it could be like kind of like a side console? And not every game's going to work, kind of like the PC with VR. But Ed, what are your feelings? Do you think Sony might actually allow it to work kind of independently with like a limited, kind of like Switch style, where like games will run a little bit, or very specific ones can run independently? Or do you feel like Sony's just gonna definitely make sure it's tethered with the PS5 hardware?
Oh, you mean all on its own like the Quest 2?
Kinda, yeah. It's still PlayStation ecosystem. Like it'll be PlayStation Network, and that's where the games will come from. But do you think Sony's gonna allow it to be used separately, kind of like Oculus Quest 2 style? Or do you think it's just gonna be tethered to the PS5?
I don't I don't think they're going to put the necessary hardware under the headset itself to make it work as a standalone console, but I could see them making PC drivers and software so you can use it also as a PC headset. They've already that you can already use the DualSense as a PC controller, and there's already PC games that have implemented the DualSense trigger features and some of the haptics. So, they that's already able to be used on PC with all its gimmicks and features. So I could see Sony wanting to provide the options for that for PC. It only makes sense. Then they get more people buying their hardware, and they might still have exclusive PSVR games on the PlayStation, but that's just another entry point into their ecosystem. So I think that would be smart of them. I don't think they're going to put all the necessary, I think all the processor and storage space on the headset itself for it to be a standalone thing. Because really, like, what is it going to be? Either it's kind of an all or nothing, uh, proposition, in the sense that the PSVR would have to be able to run almost every. I mean, is Sony just going to allow it to run only small VR games where, they might fit on this headset, but to run the real big ones, you have to hook it to the PlayStation? I just don't see them fragmenting their library like that.
I could imagine it, considering that there's like indie titles that would be small and they could sign a couple of indie ones. I'm gonna disagree with you on that they'll do like official drivers for it to work on PC. I think people have figured out how to like get PSVR headsets working through PC because they're electronic devices. But I don't think Sony's ever going to do official support for that. I think they're going to just want it to be on the PlayStation 5. It'd be a pleasant surprise if they do that, but I feel like that's still not in the cards. Like Sony is still going to try to tie it in with the hardware, and I'm not confident that they'll put in enough hardware for it to run independently. But I feel like it's much more realistic at this point that later, and I think they're still finalizing the headset, which is part of why we haven't seen it yet, is that they're probably messing around with that and seeing, and obviously with the chip shortage and stuff, they're not going to put out, they don't want to put out more electronics when they can barely sell the PlayStation 5 as is. So I think it'd be smarter for them to have it as an independent, because I think a big problem with PSVR 1 was that you needed both a PlayStation 4 and the headset, which you essentially were paying like $800 to do both, and that's a barrier I think a lot of people um, don't want to stomach, or it's a big barrier to penetrating to a larger audience. So I feel like the smarter move would be to try and put that in and allow for like a library, so they can go, hey, yes, you, if you don't have a PlayStation 5 yet, you can still buy a VR headset, you can still play a selection of games on the system, and then that way you could still buy this, and then whenever you can get yourself a PlayStation 5, go right ahead and do that. So that would be my suspicion. But yeah, I'm not super confident. I wouldn't put money down on them doing that. So yeah, any other thoughts
I
on?
think
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I think as a consumer, I would prefer them to put less computing hardware into the headset to bring down the cost. Because I'm gonna buy a PlayStation 5, and I bet a lot of people would. So I feel like if it were a smaller fee on top of the PlayStation 5, that's what I'd prefer. But I haven't done the marketing analysis. I don't know what the the potential buyers look like, where how many would want it standalone and how many would just want a smaller amount on top of the PlayStation 5 to add VR to their system. So I think those it could go either way.
Uh,
I hadn't considered that thought before you mentioned it now, but
yeah.
I could see it going that way.
Just Googled quickly to see what PSVR sales were according to this April 1st, 2021 article, which, sure, okay, April Fool's date, but it doesn't look like it's an April Fool's article. From roadtovr.com. Wait, the PSVR reached 5 million unit sales as of January 1st, 2020. So it's probably sold a bit more since then, but 5 million units out of like the 100 million PlayStation 4s. So you can math that out and see that's a relatively low amount, but 5 million for a VR headset is still nothing to sneeze at. So I'd say that's a pretty decent win for that. And I think you're right. I get your idea. Also, is another way they could go about it is making the headset cheaper to make it easier to be sold as an accessory to the PlayStation 5. But I think in order to do that, and I don't know if they could do this without seriously just cutting their margins, I think you'd need to be like, the headset is just $100 more with the controllers in order for it to be like that sweet spot of, oh yeah, I'll buy the PlayStation 5 for $400 or $500, and then also spend an extra 100 for the VR headset. So I would think that it being standalone is far more, would have a better chance of selling higher overall in the long term. But that is another way that they could go about it, make it cheaper. And if they could get it down to like that $100, I don't even know if it was 200, because PSVR I think
The
was like 400. Oh yeah, so
Mike bought the PSVR bundle
yeah.
last year, and it came with the controllers, the headset, and I think Iron Man VR, which I don't think that's a very good game.
Did it come with
So
the camera
I
too?
wouldn't.
Does the bundle include the camera?
I think it comes with a camera, and
Okay.
that all was 350. So if they didn't need to include the camera, and it was just two controllers and the headset,
No,
I
they
I could
do
see
need to
them.
include the camera, because you can't do the VR headset or the Move controllers without the camera. The camera is required for VR.
For the PSVR 2.
For VR 1, I meant.
I'm saying if they don't need to include the camera for BSVR 2 and they just need controllers in
Oh,
the
okay.
headset, like $200, maybe they're not making a lot of money on it, maybe they're but I feel like that a lot of people could stomach that versus 350. I mean, 350 is what the price of the Switch OLED. You could get or another console for that much. You could
That
and you could get a Series S for that much. If you want, you get access to more than just a library of VR games. You get a whole separate library from another console. So the
exactly.
200 is still within the range where, it's kind of a toss up. What else are you going to get for 200? The Switch Lite?
Yeah, I think it should be a little bit lower, and obviously everyone's gonna want lower. But yeah, I think definitely, hopefully they can get the price under 300 because, and I'm not talking 299.99. I mean, like even 250 is pushing it, but you don't. Most people aren't gonna want to buy something that's as expensive as the console they're doing. To the exact point you made, they could just spend and buy a whole other console. That's a whole other huge library of games that they're probably interested in. So, all right, that was a lot on VR2. We'll see once more information comes out, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more once there's more concrete details. But Sony's gearing up as they just showed like their first PSVR game, and who knows what other kind of fun gimmicks they'll throw into it. Maybe they'll just have VR gaming mode where you. I think they did that with PSVR. You could just play the games in the headset. But either way, so now moving on uh, to the overall conversation of like with PlayStation. So I do have a PS5 right now, and you've played on PS5s before. So how do you feel about the console right now, Ed, in terms of what you've experienced kind of secondhand, not owning it yet?
um, so I like the Dual Sense. I one of my friends who lives locally to me has one, so I've been over to his house. We played Astro's Playroom, which I agree that was really cool. Um, I So I've experienced the Dual Sense. I don't like the actual shape of the console. Like, I wish they would
Yeah.
come out with a slim version like sooner than later because it just is too big. The shape is weird. That's probably the thing I like least about the console. Like, I the Xbox Series X looks so much better compared to the PlayStation 5. And I feel like it's just such a more refined looking console, and it fits into Entertainment Center better too. Uh, As far as the power of it goes, I've seen Ratchet and Clank and Returnal in person, and they both look great. And those being early games on the PS5 definitely gives you confidence that as the generation goes on, they could really push the graphical envelope. I also saw God of War, the PS4 game, playing enhanced on the PS5, and that looked great too. Even last gen PS4 games get a significant upgrade. They're not as good looking as the new Ratchet, which looks great. But I'm sold that it does feel like a good you know power upgrade compared to the PS4. And there are some games that I want to play on PS4 that I kind of feel like I need to wait until PS5 to play until I get one. I haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake yet, and I have that waiting for me on my shelf, but I'm kind of like, I want to play the good version. Another one that I want to play that is probably in that category is I want to play Yakuza Like a Dragon. I know that has a PS5 upgrade. Scarlet Nexus just came out, and I hear that runs terribly on the PS4. I haven't tried the demo yet, but I'm almost like, I want to play the good version. And I've never really been that big of a graphical stickler, and especially for frame rate. But you've beaten it so hard into me that I should expect more. That I'm feeling that way. Like, why can't I ask for more as a gamer?
Yeah. And I've said before, I have played 30 FPS games. Like I played Horizon Zero Dawn when on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro at 30 when it was the only choice. I played Days Gone. I played Ghost of Tsushima when 30 FPS was the only thing. I'm talking not Sony. I've played Switch game. I played Astral Chain at 30, and that was my only choice. And I think what else, but it's just when you have the option to play at the higher frame rate and it's well optimized to do so. Not every game hits that. And I play God of War. So yeah, you actually brought up some more games. Like the new God of War I like. I'm not a big fan of the old God of War. Ghost of Tsushima was fantastic. Days Gone I think is pretty good. And just getting to play those, even just testing them out at the higher frame rates, I'm just like, it's almost like a whole new game. So I'm excited for the Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut update that's coming out. I'm hoping Horizon Zero Dawn gets a PlayStation update in time for their Horizon 2 marketing, but we'll see. Um, yeah, and it really has made a huge difference. I think the SSD with the loading time also makes a huge difference too. It's just a quality of life thing that I feel like right now everyone's like, this is so great. And I think we're quickly going to get like, um, people already, no, people aren't necessarily, it doesn't seem like people are taking it for granted. People are still kind of in that honeymoon phase where it's like, wow, this is really working. And Rift Apart, which I haven't played myself, but I've heard a lot of testimony online from the different outlets and YouTubers that I listen to, being like, it's kind of impressive that this is happening, and we can tell that this feels like a truly next gen feature, and the reason why like the SSD is necessary, and hopefully in the future, the SSD expansion will be taken care of. I know right now Sony added in the ability to do the USB hard drive like storage for just holding not only PlayStation 4 games but now also cold storage for PS5 games, and you can swap between the two. So my
The load times. Not to interrupt you, I will say that I just finished Near Replicant, and the load times in that, like, I feel like I spent like an hour waiting for load times out of the time I played it. Like, because every time you spend 2 minutes running through an area and then another 30 seconds just waiting for the next area to load. Like, that would have been a huge quality of life improvement in me playing that. You probably didn't have to deal with that, so I'm a little jealous.
But I played that on PC, so that which with an SSD, so that's a little bit different, and
Mm.
that's a part of the conversation as well that we'll get into is PlayStation starting to port more games to the PC platform, not just through streaming with PS Now, but um, yeah, my experience, I'm aware of like there's OS level issues with PlayStation 5. With my experience, because I do kind of primarily game on PC, only coming to PS5 for the exclusives there, it's been I haven't really had to deal with too many of the issues, but I have like the store is still poorly organized. It doesn't call out the proper editions, and you have to be in the know to look for, do I have the right edition of a game or a demo that I want to play before I do this. I did have a really positive experience though for one of the free upgrades where I rented Immortal Phoenix Rising um, from the Ubisoft game. Yeah, Ubisoft management abuses their employees, so try not to support Ubisoft if you can help it. Um, but I tried the game because it looked interesting before like the allegations were like in full swing and everything, and I haven't bought it yet, but I was going to buy it on PC if I do buy it, and I waited for all the DLC. But I tried it. It had a PS5 upgrade, so I got the PS4 disc in the mail from GameFly. I put it in. I realized, oh, I can do this. So I was able to easily insert the disc, download the PS5 version, deleted the PS4 version, or I don't know if it like just changes the signature of the game or whatever. And that was really cool. That was really cool to be like, oh, this is what the upgrade process is at its smoothest. And not every game, of course, like transferring saves or even upgrading is that easy. And not sure why the save transfer stuff is so messed up. I would love to hear internally what the deal is with why some of these save systems are so difficult to like transfer save over up to the new version and see what's going on. I don't know if we'll ever get a clean explanation, but that's something I would love to hear about. So far, yeah, the PS5 I think as a product has proven through the quality of the experiences when they work of the games that they work great. I like the dual sense most of the time. It's a bit bigger, and I understand that like there's a lot of people who have bigger hands than me, and I'm kind of weird. Like I have kind of lankier. It's not that I have small hands, but my hands are more lanky than they are like meaty. So for me, I prefer kind of like smaller controllers. It's really weird, but my hands do cramp up a little bit more at a shorter period of time after playing. Also, the D-pad's not clicky enough for me, so I'm really upset with that. But everything else I feel is fine. I really like the Dual Shock 4. Same problem. The D-pad I just think was poor. but the DualSense is great. The haptic stuff is okay. I could take it or leave it. The trigger stuff I really don't need. It's neat, but I don't need, and especially after I heard that people who have had triggers break and fail, like that the triggers lose all resistance and no longer register. I'm just like, you know what? I think I'd rather not have that tech in there, and I'd rather have more reliable tech overall. Luckily, at the system level, you can turn off all those features. So either as an accessibility, if your hands, are more sensitive to stuff like that, you can turn it off, which is fantastic. Or in the games, you can turn it off setting by setting for the most part. So that's really cool. I think it would be. Oh yeah, D-pad's not as great. It's still too mushy, and battery life is atrocious. I don't get it. I don't understand. Sony should just either figure out where Nintendo got its battery from for the Switch Pro, and who knows, maybe that controller is just using too much juice. But either way, they should put in a bigger battery. The gyro's better, but the D-pad and the battery need to be fixed. They should have. I would prefer if everyone just aped Microsoft when it came to put in the double A's or a rechargeable battery pack. Come with the rechargeable pack by default, and then put in double A's if you really need to hot swap. I don't get it, man. I don't know why they can't fix that, especially when we have other controllers that just work fine without it. With when it comes to being rechargeable, and we have better devices. It sucks. They put so much emphasis in certain things, but then it's like you gotta get these things together. And that's the other thing. The OS level problems, I can't really speak to all of them, but people, go look for them. It's not a secret. And I haven't personally found them too inconvenient for me and my uses, but as I've said, I'm kind of more of a light PlayStation user in terms of just the exclusives. But overall, I've been pretty happy with it. So I mean, yeah, slim model would be great. I agree with you, Ed. It would be cool. I'm fine with it right now. I have my disc model. I don't think I really need to. I think if a slim version did come out, there'd need to be a significant. I don't know what it would take to get me to buy a new one, but right now I think I'm going to be fine because I want the Blu-rays. I want to be able to play 4K Blu-rays. I like having discs for renting. So for me, that's fine. Digital version obviously looks way sleeker since it can actually be symmetrical. And there's a huge heat sink inside the system, which is part of the reason why it's so bulky. But yes, I agree with you. We don't need the pop collar look. They could totally have made a much more sleek box that still look cool, but they probably would still go with some weird rounded edge thing like they went with the PlayStation 4 or with the PlayStation 3. I meant the rounded thing of the PlayStation 3, which looked like the George Foreman. Don't get what they were
Or
thinking
the
there.
or the pink pearl eraser of the PlayStation 4. The angled. They always want to do something weird.
I like the PlayStation 4's base design. I don't
I
like
actually do too.
I don't like the gloss panel. I think they should have just made it all matte or just made that like a flat black matte if they wanted it to be two-tone. The little capacitive buttons on the front were like the capacitive buttons and the asymmetrical feet were the two big problems with the PlayStation 4. But otherwise, I loved the angle design. I loved how sleek that thing looked and yeah, the ports on the back could be a little difficult to reach, but I kind of like plan for that kind of stuff. So it's almost like it doesn't inconvenience me because I'm ready for it. But I get that they could have probably adjusted and made that a little bit more ergonomics, not the word, but it could have been engineered better, I guess. But I like the shape overall. I thought it was really cool. I was really disappointed with the layer cake design of the PlayStation 4 Pro, but it was, I dealt with it. So
I like the slim a lot. It's so small, it's thin, it's quiet. I mean, I don't know. I always like the slim version of their consoles, except the PS2 Slim. It was small, but I didn't like the CD player opening. I prefer a tray or a slot loading drive. But I guess that had an advantage in that fewer moving parts, probably more reliable. But there's always good things and bad things about a console revision. That's just life, I guess.
actually, I will disagree with you on that. I think the PS2 Slim was amazing at how small it was, and there were horror stories of the disc trays either breaking or discs getting stuck inside those loaders, and that still happens today because now pretty much all disk drive things are auto loader to have one less
Yeah.
part that could break. But your discs getting stuck inside systems can suck. So you know what? I'll take the pop top because at worst you break off the top and you could at least get your discs out of a system if it really came to it. Or I don't even know if you actually need the panel closed. I think there's just like little buttons and stuff, so you could always like tape those down if you really needed to. But yeah, I was really impressed. You couldn't use the PlayStation 2 hard drive with the Slim, but only like 3 games actually use that. Final Fantasy 11, um, SOCOM. There's one more. I think there was one that used it, but yeah. Um, so I'll disagree with you on that. I think the PlayStation 3 Slims didn't quite get there. They were better, but they weren't also quite that impressive looking. But I think that was due to the PlayStation 3 just being that weird, like, design. Um, yeah, PlayStation 4 Pro, PlayStation 1 was like kind of 90s in like late 90s design, which it's not bad. I think it's very iconic. Um, but it is definitely. And then when they did the PS1, the really small version, that thing's. I never owned one, but I've seen it several times, and especially with the pop top screen that could come with it. That was a really good revision there. When they do an inevitable PS5 revision, hopefully it looks pretty cool. But like I said, I probably don't need it unless there's like some significant hardware change to it, because I'll just, I'll buy an extra SSD at some point and slot it in, and the panel's easy enough to remove. It's not that scary, so I don't need to spend another couple hundred on that. But who knows? Maybe I'll want to give my PlayStation or sell my PlayStation 5 to a friend for like a cheap amount and make sure everyone's got a PlayStation 5 to game with. But I don't foresee a
Yeah,
Slim.
I my complaint is I'm gonna need to get like a new TV stand or table or whatever to hold it. But I'm probably gonna need that anyway if I get a new TV. So
You should do it,
it'll
man.
probably happen in the next year, both those things.
Not gonna hurt, but
I'm
yeah,
just
just you can start
yeah,
enjoying stuff
it'll
now.
it'll happen.
Yeah. So, anyways, on to that. So, I guess we feel pretty confident about their consoles. They still need to fix up some stuff. It is a shame that like these systems come out kind of little undercooked, and then they update it with patches. So it's almost like you might as well wait for like a year after release, anyways. But now we're going to be getting onto a year soon, and people can't even get PlayStation 5s readily now. So we'll see, and that's due to the chip shortage, and that's an external factor that Sony had no control over, other than not releasing a PlayStation 5 at all.
Do you think they should have done that? Do you think they should have delayed it? Because I've heard that as a opinion from people.
Yes, I am in the camp that it would have been better to just delay it wholesale and let some more of the stuff come out later. I appreciate having it as soon as I did, because there were some games I did really appreciate being able to play at 60. But overall, yeah, I could have waited. I didn't really need it, and with the PC and stuff, a lot of the third-party games I could have done there, or I could have just waited till the PlayStation 5 was out to buy those games again and just save myself some headache. So yeah, I think it would have been smarter, but who knows how long this chip shortage is supposed to last. So they might, this year might not have even been a good idea for them to launch. Next year might not still be that great an idea for them to launch, especially, if Xbox would have stayed with it and got their system out. Xbox would again been a year ahead, and who knows what would have happened, because they would have been the first gen. So I'm not saying Xbox should have. I think they should have delayed as well. But if Xbox didn't, because we're not talking about Xbox right now, then yeah, like that's a risk that they both had to take, and if they didn't coordinate for that, but they're competitors, so it's a different thing. Yeah, moving on. What Ed? What's the next PlayStation thing you want to talk about?
Well, I think these kind of can go together in some way, but two of the things I think a lot about how the PlayStation could be doing better in my book are with their approach to backwards compatibility and also with their approach to services like
Hmm.
PS Plus and PS Now. We could start with either of those, but I will say that right now their approach to backwards compatibility is, at least with the PS3 generation, is PS Now. Um, you can stream PS3 games, and that's pretty much your only option to play games from that generation. They do sell some PS2 games as an emulated form, um, in the that run on the PS4, but they aren't doing as well as Xbox does in that respect. And I get their argument that it is a lesser used feature. You know, what did they cite? Like 2 or 3% of people really actually use that feature. Um, but I do think it's something that it's a goodwill type action.
Hmm.
Like I get a good feeling that I can play those games, and maybe I don't do it very often, but I mean, how cool would it be to say that the PlayStation 5 is, the ultimate PlayStation in the sense that it can play even if it's not every game from the past generations. If it were a large portion like the Xbox and you could buy some of those and digitally, I think that would just be such a good image for them. Um, but they're number one right now, and they're selling out every unit they can make, so they don't need to do that. But I'll mention the Stream Deck and the Xbox a little bit. I'm hoping those provide some much needed competition to give Sony, the impetus to invest in those kind of features, whether it be the services, maybe bringing PS Now or PS Plus to be a all-inclusive service with their new games. I talk about we can mention PC for a moment, but PC is pretty much the ultimate backwards compatibility system.
And
There's
forwards.
games from yeah, and forwards there's games from decades ago that maybe they're supposedly only run on Windows XP or earlier, but most of them people find a way to get them to work. And even if and a lot of them end up on like good old games with those fan patches or official patches built in to bring them up to modern standards. So um, there's kind of the expectation, and it is the reality that you buy a game on PC, you're gonna have access to it, um, almost indefinitely, barring some catastrophic event. Like, can you imagine Steam going out of business? I can't at this point, but I guess it
No,
could happen. But
it could,
but
but
it doesn't seem likely. I mean, I feel like if Steam goes out of business, that's not going to be the only thing that's going on in the world that is going to be crazy. So,
yeah.
they, it and Xbox is doing a good job. So, services and backwards compatibility, which I think can be kind of tied together in terms of offering a robust library and legacy strategy for the PlayStation.
Yeah. So specifically on backwards compatibility, um, I'm sh- I get that there's plenty of business sense to it. I agree with you that I'd say the business sense has more to do with goodwill towards the community and respecting your library and history. And like I've been saying, I've really only taken advantage of backwards compatibility because I know that my old games are now running way better on my new system. So you've got that situation where you're going to have people save and like they have these games and they're going to bring them here and they're going to play them. Sony, of course, would love to just charge you to do so and be like, okay, well, just you have to buy the PS5 version or you have to buy the upgrade, etc. And that happens for a few, but not many because there's been a huge consumer backlash on that, especially with the global pandemic putting a lot of people out of work for a period of time. So even with like what financial assistance, you know, uh, places that do have it have been helping the unemployed. It's not in Sony's best interest to try to gouge that, and more of the third parties have been that way. So, but what is funny when it comes to backwards compatibility, even if Sony didn't let you just put in the discs in the system and just play it and have like emulation software, which they totally can do. PlayStation 1's not hard to emulate. PlayStation 2 is definitely not that hard to emulate. Sure, they'd need a team that would go through and like double check some of the titles. PlayStation 3 is a lot more difficult. I'm not sure where it's at, but the PC like PS3 emulators are coming along, and Sony's the one who has access to the source code. So if anyone's going to be able to figure it out and like get emulators working properly on new hardware, they could totally do it. Although a lot of PS3 games um are have been remade at this point, but there's still a whole bunch of games that that have not. So, not even talking third party because that's not really up to Sony. Microsoft took it upon themselves when it came to the Xbox One backwards compatibility or Xbox backwards compatibility initiative, starting with Xbox One. to like not as far as I understand, they don't charge other developers to do that. They optimize it themselves because like this is important to us. Just sign on and let us do this. Like that was their point. Um, but Sony, let's not even talk about third party. First party. How does it make any business sense to not make God of War 1, 2, and 3 available for purchase on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5 PSN stores? Why is the PSP store and the Vita store different than the total PSN? I understand that you need like different interfaces for those platforms, but why is it not all connected to the same database? Like in the news, the those libraries were going to get shut down, those stores were going to get shut down, and people started buying a bunch of stuff, and then Sony was like, okay, well, I guess we're not shutting them down just yet because there's they saw people were going to spend money. But why? That just speaks to such a crazy disorganization, and this even goes all the way back to how the username stuff wasn't set up properly, and that's why it took so long for them to figure out something to make it work. I wonder if they even talk to outside help, but it's like someone needs to go in there and get that all sorted out and managed to be like, we need to get all of this consolidated in a way that makes sense for forward future compatibility. And God of War, let's say maybe they're planning on taking God of War 1, 2, and 3 and like doing like big remakes of them, which at this point, God of War 1 totally could do like, could totally get a full remake. God of War 2 and 3, less so, especially 3, but I'm just talking about that one because that's like the most obvious trilogy that I could see them like bringing back. And then of course it's got a few like PSP titles. I don't remember if it was a Vita title, but taking those games.
I don't think so. I don't think there is.
So there's the four. There's God of War 1, 2, and 3. I forget what the prequel one was called, and then there's the two PSP games.
There's God of War 1, 2, and 3. There is Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta on PSP. I think the prequel game is called Ascension.
Yeah. So even
Ascension was weird. They went a weird. They were all over the place with their mythology in that one.
yeah. So either way, like yeah, sure. Do the God of War Ragnarok.
All of them are worth. All of them are worth playing, though. The fond memories of all those.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're not. But it is Sony is doing a disservice to themselves to not have a playable, purchasable version on the PSN for all of the old God of Wars. Touch up the PSP ones. Touch up the PSP ones. Touch up the PS1, at least with resolution, fixes and stuff like that. Ratchet and Clank has a huge library of games. The Jack and Daxter games, why not do a slightly updated trilogy, which, any of these things we could say are lined up for remakes, although Naughty Dog may not be. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the Jack and Daxter games do have PS2 versions on PS4. I actually bought them. Of course, I haven't played them, but from what I've read, is their performance leaves something to be desired.
Which is also
So I don't
inexcusable.
know if they're Yeah, I don't know if their PS2 emulator is quite up to snuff for PS4. It should be, and if it isn't for PS4, they should update them for PS5 to make it better.
Absolutely. Like, it's inexcusable that the first parties couldn't properly optimize their games to make sure that they're resellable in perpetuity. Even if they choose to redo it. Like, obviously it would be way cooler if the original Ratchet and Clank game was actually just packed in with the remake of Ratchet and Clank so people could see them side by side. But to not be able to go back and be like, oh, I really like this Ratchet and Clank here. Oh, the first one's available for like $5, $10. Oh, you know what? I'll try it. I really like this. Oh, like there's no reason that they shouldn't be doing that. And I think that's where they're dropping the ball terribly. Most of the companies are dropping the ball, except for Xbox, who went through all that. But I think it just goes to show that Microsoft with capital, and I think we can attribute this to Phil Spencer and just having someone who cares and has come up from that. And I think that's one of the problems, like with Sony, which has also got they've got like Sony Music and they've got the Sony movies and stuff like that, and so they've got all.
Anime.
Is
They're
it?
big into anime.
But do
I
they
think
own an anime?
they own. I think they own Funimation and Crunchyroll now. I think
That
they, or maybe they were acquiring one of them and they own the other. But
right, but I think that's
yeah,
just another branch of something, or it's part of a branch, and that's the thing. Like, but the PlayStation branch doesn't have that like leader, and Jim Ryan, who's the current president, I believe, has been saying some really dumb things, and it just goes to show they don't like. He is their Don Matrick, apparently, from what I'm understanding, for Xbox One. Like the dude just doesn't quite get the point of the video games, and is thinking way too strict on business. And sure, it may be working, but if it's going to kill the goodwill, like you're going to see these cycles, just like the last couple consoles. Every time a console is the leader, they get cocky with the next one. They end up tanking stuff, and they have to like work their way back. And then the competitor is better off because they're trying harder, but also they're only that much better by comparison, rather than they're actually competing against something. Um, Competing against something that's equally good, and they have to step up their game. So good on Xbox for that stuff. And PlayStation, just it's hard to see that it's good business to not do those things and not to get these things going. Um, the other
and
thing,
that's where I was gonna say we can segue into services,
yeah,
where
exactly.
that's another area where Xbox is beating PlayStation. Or just a few things off the top of my head. Obviously there's Game Pass, but there's also the fact that they offer cloud saves for free with any Xbox Live account. Steam
Hmm.
does that too. Like you don't have to pay extra for cloud saves,
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of like, I think that should be expected. I think we should expect that from Nintendo too. I mean, how expensive is cloud storage for corporations now? Not very, and it's kind of like, you get iCloud backups for, if you have a iPhone even, you get a certain space for iCloud backups, and that is, that's usually enough for your iPhone and the app data. So like it's kind of like, and Google gives you that for Android. They give you a certain amount of space. Like I feel like just having a base level of storage with your account for a given technology company is just normal. And Sony and Nintendo are the only ones that aren't doing that. But we already talked about Nintendo, but Sony is lacking in that area.
yeah.
And PS Now has a lot of stuff on it. Like if you want to play old PS3 games, they do have all the God of Wars. They have all most of the Ratchet games. They have all the Metal Gear Solid. Like they have a lot of core PlayStation franchises on PS3. Like they have good stuff, but not much in the way of modern games. I think recently they just got Red Dead Redemption 2 as an option to
Mm,
download or
mm,
stream from PlayStation Now, but that's a pretty old game. Great game, but it's not recent.
yeah,
And yeah, I don't even think they have all the old PlayStation exclusives on PS Now. Like they rotate them in and out.
which doesn't make any sense now that we've seen how Game Pass worked. Or even if we were just armchair CEOing this and said like, what were we going to do if we were going to make this kind of service? Well, obviously we put up all the first party titles for forever after like so long, but it's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense where they do this. So talking about the services, let me back up to just PlayStation Plus first. They're still giving away games, which is fine. I don't claim every game, and I don't think there's anything wrong with if you claim them all just so you have them, or you don't claim them all. If you just pick and choose what you like, and if you're already paying for the service and you don't have the means to buy the games when you want to, that makes sense. Just claim them all so you just have them in case you ever want to try them. It is added value. But like for me, it's a matter of if I'm not interested in the game, I know I'm not going to play it. Like claiming it doesn't really do anything for me. It's the same as if I didn't buy it in general. And if I do end up deciding for some reason that I do want to play it, I'm like, it might be on sale, and I can always buy it later, or I can rent it. And if it was a disc version, digital games, of course, digital only, that's different. All the services, Xbox, Nintendo, PlayStation, are still charging for online, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I'd really love to know. I don't know if there's numbers out there for this because I don't think they'd ever really want to say. Like, this is part of the thing. They never want us to know. As I've said on monetization, they don't really want us to know the true numbers, because if we had the data, if it was public, we would know just how much they're taking advantage of us. I would love to know just how many people are subscribed strictly to do online multiplayer, and if they took that out, how many people would just lapse or unsubscribe and wouldn't go for any of the bonus stuff. Because like, I appreciate the sales on from PlayStation Plus. I appreciate some of the free games. I appreciate some of the extra demos and services from being subscribed to PlayStation Plus. I've been saying that they should just drop the multiplayer. At this point, but let me correct, because now once PlayStation Now came out, I was saying like they should have bundled that in with PlayStation Plus and locked them together. And now Xbox does Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, so clearly there's an example to ape. They should drop the multiplayer thing and just go, hey, it's this huge power move. Like, hey, we are ungating multiplayer on our platform, and instead, PlayStation Now will be part of PlayStation Plus. Same price. Maybe it goes up $10. I don't know. Maybe it's $70 a month, but you will still get deals. You will still get exclusive demos, other partnerships and stuff, and maybe they'll offer an extra game now for free for claiming or something like that, or maybe every once in a while they'll actually give you like a free game, like the way Xbox did for 360, where you could keep the game instead of needing to maintain the subscription, something like that. And then also you'll be able to do the PlayStation Now services, so you can download games if they're PS4 or PS5, and you can stream all those plus PS3 games or PS2 and PS1 to your system for that. And then announce also that you're adding PSP and Vita games to the library for streaming there. And that's a power move. That's a huge, like, come to PlayStation. Our online is free, and if you sign up for the service, you get all this value. And I think that would be amazing. But it's true. I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. What does that number look like? How much money do they lose from those people who really only care about multiplayer and buy like those 2 or 3 games a year? They buy FIFA, they buy Madden, they buy Call of Duty. What's that audience size, and what does that look like? I could.
What's funny for me is the biggest reason I subscribe to PlayStation Plus is the cloud saves. I actually
Yeah,
did
that too.
try to back them up to a USB drive, and I had issues with it. And it's also like I, I use Time Machines on my Mac to back it up, but I forget about it for a while. So it's nice to have like that automatic backup. I have enough games where I spent a lot of time in that I felt like if I got 40 hours in or more and I lost that save, I'm probably never going to finish it. So it's worth my money to have that insurance to, know that in a catastrophic event, I can still enjoy the rest of the games I've been playing. So they might lose me as a subscriber if that were free, but if they did have a really valuable, you know, game offering, that I could see myself using that. So, but a lot of these subscriptions aren't necessarily about creating value. I feel like they're about extracting value, extracting more like
Extracting
extracting
money.
money from the
Yeah.
consumer. Yeah, they're not about creating value. They're about
Hmm.
extracting subscription fees.
Pretty much. That seems to be the case. It's kind of always been. I mean, way back at the beginning, it seemed like it was legit for Microsoft, like just getting their servers up and running and maintaining that stuff. But now it's part of the business model. So the Azure cloud and all that stuff, like they don't need. They have business money and stuff like that. They don't need the money from the console subscribers. For Sony, they make way less money than Microsoft does. So they I could see why they still need something like that. But yeah, the value out there. Cloud saves, you should still have some cloud saves. It should be like the way Google's Gmail works, where it's like you get a base level, and then if you opt in, or I'll even say Apple's amount, like it's 99 cents a month. I opted into it to have the extra iCloud data.
Yeah, it's 50 gigabytes for 99 cents a month.
Yeah.
I don't even think about 99 cents a month.
Yeah, so that's what Sony should do with PlayStation Plus, is they should be like, okay, so we're gonna have a 5 gigs for free for everyone, because some saves are way bigger than others, but I think 5 gigs is probably good for the usual people. Once again, listeners, you can send me information in the comments. I'm happy to see you cite official sources and whatnot for any of this that I get wrong, or anything that we get wrong. We want to have an in-depth discussion here and talk about hard facts. Well, as many hard facts as we're
There
privy to.
there are there are a few games that I have where the saves are pushing 1 gigabyte, so I would already be over 5 gigabytes. You
Right.
know, I the Death Stranding save I think I saw last when I looked at it was 900 megabytes, so it would go quick
S
if you're someone who plays a lot of AAA games.
Yeah.
But
So let's just say it's, and I think Sony actually did partner with Microsoft for using Azure clouds at some point. I think that was a big headline. But anyways, okay, I'll use the like you get 15 gigabytes as like your baseline, and then you get 200 gigabytes if you while you're subscribed to PlayStation Plus. Stuff like that, super easy. And of course, I appreciate being able to back up save files offline if necessary. Nintendo, go suck eggs for not letting us back up saves locally. I'm just going to pirate more without your system. So, did you win? No, you didn't. So, um, yeah, I think PlayStation Plus could definitely get upgraded. PlayStation Now, I don't know what to do. Microsoft is making a really risky play, but they're so behind that it makes sense that they're just like, games are coming to Game Pass day one. And I feel like the only reason people wouldn't be subscribed to Game Pass, other than not having an Xbox, would be like you, Ed, where like they're a person that I hate having subscriptions. I have too many subscriptions. I don't want to do one more.
I'm starting to change. You know what's funny is I've tried a number of free trials in the last 6 months,
Hmm.
and they keep getting their claws into me to where I just like, well, I like this enough. I
Yeah.
really like if I were really serious about not having free subscriptions at this point, I would not be suckered into free trials. But
Hmm.
it's very easy to get used to having something, uh, and want to keep it.
Yeah.
Even if like maybe even if I only use it like 5 or 10 hours a month at most, like so you do get some value out of it.
Yeah.
So
And
I could see myself having Game Pass, especially if I did have an Xbox.
yeah, we're also both very lucky to be able to afford $60 a year for the
For sure.
PlayStation Plus. So that's that. I don't subscribe to PlayStation Now. I am subscribed to Game Pass, as I've mentioned on. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned on previous episodes because I can play it on PC, and that's like the closest thing to rentals. And now that it lets me like, there's digital exclusives there, so I can try games. And what I'll do is I'll try the games there, and then if I like it, I will buy the game on Steam, or I don't really like to. I haven't bought stuff through the Xbox store yet because most of my friends are on Steam, and Steam's still the better platform in general. But I would have no problem buying it on Xbox if it was just as good a platform as Steam. So I try stuff there, and then I buy that there. I did that recently with Celeste, where I ended up playing through the whole game on Game Pass, and I'm like, oh, that was great. Let's go to Steam, and I just bought it and said, yep, yeah, there you go. I bought the game. So I like to try and do that to make sure I'm contributing to good games, or games I enjoy at least. But yeah, I think that is a tough call for Sony to be like, these exclusives are coming day and date to their downloading platform that you're subscribed to. Um, I think they could still do better with getting some third party exclusives there, some riskier titles, some independent titles, which they've been doing. Like Bug Snacks was a free PS1 game. They did Destruction All Stars on there. Sega with Virtua Fighter 5. Ultimate Showdown, I think, is the remaster title for it. So they're trying to be a little more aggressive with that to compete with Game Pass, but they could still do some more. And it just, I think they hate crossplay. And the Apple and Epic court papers revealed that Sony was doing deals with crossplay to make the other platform, or not other platforms, the publishers or developers pay to allow crossplay there. And I think that if they just, I don't know, yeah, they should do better in the service department. And PlayStation Now, um, yeah, PlayStation Now, the streaming stuff, like it's just not ready yet. Streaming is obviously convenient for some people, but in general, it's still a much lower bar of quality. But people have dealt with lower quality because that's all they can do, and that's I'd say that's on the company just as much, that they're not delivering a product that's worthwhile. And I don't know what to say, because I try not to be too crazy about stuff, but like the frame rate thing, 60 FPS just feels way better. Like it's just something that's so noticeable once you've been experienced to it, that you're like, yeah, it makes sense that to be a stickler about that. I'm not a stickler about resolution. I'd be fine with 1080 60 all day, all week, all month. But
I
yeah,
think that's a common opinion that they pick frame. Among enthusiasts, I've heard
yeah.
many people say I'd pick frame rate over resolution every day.
There are weirdos who really are really focused on resolution, and but it's hard to tell if they're actually being sincere or they're just being trolls. But to give some to take it at face value, there are some people who prefer it, and that's why the options are great. But I think let's kind of pivot a little bit for some speculation on service because Sony does allow PlayStation Now streaming on PC. They have started releasing first party titles, big first party titles on PC, starting with Horizon Zero Dawn, which had a rocky launch, was apparently not the best port. They've been working on it, but it's still not perfect. Days Gone came out and apparently was way better a port on PC. And like the game itself is like an 8 out of 10 in my opinion, especially if you like zombie games and open world survival games. And it's light survival, but it's kind of still survival. It's more of an action game, and that apparently did really well. Uncharted 4 was confirmed to be coming based on a like investors slide presentation. Um, they just said that the new God of War is now streaming on there, so don't know why that is. I feel, in my conspiratorial opinion, that feels like, oh, the PC port for God of War isn't quite ready yet, so just put something out there because it was like Horizon Zero Dawn. Like we can't do a Horizon Zero Dawn if we're gonna put that on there. God of War needs to hit as good as Days Gone did. So let's put a little more work into it. Also, we've got time because we can use it in the marketing cycle for God of War Ragnarok. And also, there was the news that Sony recently bought that studio that is good for that's used to porting PC games. So hang on, so I'm googling it right now to say the name. PlayStation 5 porting.
So, while you're googling, when you mentioned that in an investor presentation they had Uncharted 4 in their
Mm-hmm.
PC port section.
Yeah.
I also saw in a recent investor presentation about new growth vectors in cloud, where it says under service updates they have the Horizon Forbidden West and Spider-Man logo under saying persistent quality, content focus, and top IP inclusion. So,
Oh, hang on.
speculate what you want, but they're thinking about that at least.
Let me pull up that image because I think there's something. The layout to me, I led me to interpret that information a bit differently. So the studio that PlayStation purchased is called Nixes, Nixxes. It's a Dutch studio with experience in sporting and PC games. That's coming from Destructoid.com. So
Oh, I didn't hear about that one.
um,
I sent it to you actually in our group chat.
oh,
So
thank
if you
you.
look at the photos, I can send it again. Here, let me send it to you.
In wait,
Uh,
in our Discord chat or in the
I just sent it to you on iMessage. Uh,
on iMessage. Thank you.
f-
Cool. Yes.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Growth vectors
yeah.
cloud.
But if you look at it there, they say service updates, $1 for 1 month promotion. So that's kind of what Xbox has been doing with Game Pass, 1080p streaming, which is good because Xbox is investing in XCloud. And if they're getting XCloud on set top boxes and TV sets, can you imagine if you could just get a streaming service on like your cable box or on your Roku or something? Like that's a huge market of people who might not ever buy a console.
Just built
Now they might
into
have their
smart
foot in the
TVs. Yeah,
door.
exactly. Built into
Yeah,
smart
smart
device.
TVs or or like a Roku device or
Amazon Fire Stick
any internet, your
or Fire
Samsung
TV.
refrigerator.
Oh yeah, we're heading towards that. I think it'll be a valid option in the future as we upgrade internet infrastructure, get better at like latency net code and stuff like that for game stuff. Okay, so yeah, I can explain what I was thinking when I saw this slide before. Is new growth vectors cloud. So I guess it applies to this whole slide. That's one of those things where I'd want that to be a little more explicitly said to me. But when I saw those Horizon and Spider-Man um, things, and it says under it persistent quality, content focus on top IP inclusion, I thought that just means like we're continuing to deliver high quality first party IP. I didn't interpret that as part of the cloud. But I think what you were getting at, and I would agree with this based on what's shown here, is that they're probably planning on launching Spider-Man and probably Spider-Man PS4, Miles Morales, and Horizon 2. They're probably, if Horizon 1's not already on there, on PlayStation Now through streaming. I could see them doing that, going like, we're gonna do streaming day and date, but you can't download. So it's like it's still not the preferred experience, but it's something to allow you to sample it and then convince you to go like, just buy the full game. Like clearly this isn't the perfect way to do it. So just buy the full game after you've tried it.
That would be disappointing, but I could see them doing that half measure.
I
I mean,
agree.
it's a very
Disappointing.
Sony thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. Disappointing, but I'm trying to think business minded of like what are they trying to convert you to? And so that would make sense to me is that they want to give you a taste. This is a way to get around demos where like people like crack demos or download stuff and whatnot. And just be like, you can put the game up here. Nobody ever truly owns it. Like source code for the game never actually hits the system. So that way people can do that. So I can imagine that that's really attractive to a lot of game developers and publishers who are still too worried about piracy and just don't understand why piracy exists. So, okay, yeah, that was a good thing to bring up there, Ed. Um, yeah, I think that Sony is going to make some more moves, especially with PSVR. They should really like think about adding more PSVR games, making those easier to play. Hopefully, that's a thing they're planning on doing is making like a bunch of the PS4 games backwards compatible on the new PlayStation VR. But yeah, I think we kind of drilled it home that really on the service front, PlayStation is doing okay, but they really need to step up their game going forward, and it seems like they're missing some really obvious opportunities. Um,
I think even the new Steam Deck is going to be a threat to them. I could maybe Steam is going to offer a subscription service once they, once they it, I mean, the Steam Deck is going to offer a more accessible console-like experience to people who, maybe they would have gone PlayStation or Xbox, but now they have the option of, that's the market is heating up, and Sony better make sure they are prepared to compete.
we'll see. They seem like they don't want to compete until the very last minute, which is always a poor strategy. But businesses do that because they're so risk adverse and they really just it's so much apathy on top of and this I know this goes with it, but is that corporations are big and it takes a long time to steer the ship. Xbox has been slowly getting better from when Phil Spencer took over, but it has taken this long to get to this place. And even I think Xbox Game Pass is still like not super profitable for them, but it's a huge it's a huge good PR move, and it's probably slowly gaining traction, especially um, because of its presence on PC now. So we'll see in the future how that goes. But everyone loves streaming because apparently you make money, tons of money in the long run. Um, Kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on a bit is going back to the portable thing, and you were just talking about the Steam Deck. Sony did do PlayStation Portable. They did PSP. They did PlayStation Vita. Vita was a pretty decent hardware. It had some flaws to it, in my opinion, that could have been ironed out. I still think their ergonomics were a bit weak on it, and they clearly didn't support it well enough with software, and they just kind of gave up if their hardware doesn't like take off. Other than VR, which I don't know if maybe VR did make a really good amount of money for them, and they're like it's worth diving in again, or they're like committing to it as a new growth vector because it's such an open industry. But I had my own pet theory when the PS5 was still looming on the horizon, just as like a code name, and there haven't been any information of the Vita for a while or anything like that, and the Switch just blowing up, especially in Japan, because I imagine I'm aware the Japanese like industry is very insular, and when they see stuff in Japan take off, everyone kind of rushes to copycat each other in the Japanese space. And Sony had managed to do pretty well with the PSP, less so with the Vita. Um, and a lot of that is also due to piracy of the PSP, which unfortunately made them make a lot of poor design decisions with the Vita. expensive memory cards. And I think that Sony should do another portable. And my imagination led me to believe that they were going to take the PS4 spec and turn that into a portable because now, you know, that hardware spec is much more dated. Mobile technology is kind of at this point, and now with the Steam Deck, you can clearly see just how much past we are the PS4 in terms of that. And I figured they were going to like go down to like a 720 1080 machine, and they were going to allow you to simply put like PS4 games on there, take them on the go, um, and maybe even like PS5. And I imagined a thing where you could for because the biggest issue has always been like if you have the digital games, they're a lot better with like moving that stuff around. But with physical, you can't. They never give us. None of them have ever given us a solution for. I have a disc. Why can and on the new system can I like turn this into a digital edition? Can I redeem this for something for that? Because like the PS4 can't play a PS2 game even if there's a PS2 version on the PSN. Why can't I redeem this? And it's like, oh, you got to buy the new one. It's like, come on, Xbox solved all this. Like, you can't do this anymore. You can't get away with it. So a redeeming system would have always been preferable to be like, why can't I mail my disc to you? Or like what Xbox says, where you can put it in and they just read it, and as long as you have the disc, that's your key. So
You know, did you ever hear of the streaming service Vudu that sold movies?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I think Walmart owned it for a while, then another company, but they had a feature called disc to digital, where you could either put your disc in a disc drive or take a picture of the barcode of your case, and they would let you get a digital version for like a nominal fee. And
Sure.
I don't know why PlayStation can't do something like why.
Any of them.
They
Yeah.
could do it, but they think if they're gonna lose sales. You think, everyone's gonna be passing around the same copy to get the digital thing, and some people inevitably would, but
Well, if
there
that's
might be
why,
more benefit. Yeah.
yeah, that's why I was saying like if it was a disc redemption thing where you mail your disc to Sony with you fill out a form, you mail your disc to Sony, it has your PSN account on there, and they will credit you the code. Like that doesn't seem like an easy to exploit system. Of course, someone could buy a used copy and put it to there, but like you said, could it be a nominal fee? $5, $5 for like an older game or something like that, just for them to like process the disc or whatever and the mailing, or because especially if you're sending it to, well, they'd have distribution centers probably here too, but not just going to Japan. Um, but some sort of system for
Yes.
doing that.
Mail your disc across the Pacific to get a digital copy.
Well, they want the disc there because they want to verify it and do all their like I'm holding an imaginary magnifying glass. So I imagine that they could take this like theoretical PlayStation portable, new PlayStation portable that was using PS4 specs as a companion device. It can be standalone, it can be companion. If you plug it into like the console, then you could easily register like one physical game with its digital copy to the system, and that way that's kind of the compromise. You can only register one at a time, but then you can use the disc, download a digital version straight to the portable system, and that's how you claim it. And then you just have to rotate it. So it's a little compromise. It's something. So you could do that. I don't know. I don't think Sony's really. It seems like Sony really isn't interested. I wouldn't put it past them though to try again at some point, especially with mobile technology and Sony having like developed phones and things. But it most likely they're probably just going to focus on making PlayStation Now better. They did the Vita TV thing, which was weird. I did not own a Vita TV. I thought that was kind of neat, but also kind of weird. Especially when they could have just gone with the original spec of putting an HDMI out on the Vita and just letting it work. But
I think I've said it before, but I would probably buy a Switch TV just for like long-term use, because I know that battery, it could swell, like it will
sure,
eventually lose
sure,
capacity. Like anything with a battery, especially one that's glued in like it is on the Switch, is it's not gonna be there forever, and something without that is more sustainable with long term. So
yeah.
I think the Vita TV was it's good. If you care about Vita games, it's not a bad idea. But
Not every Vita
yeah,
game
it
was
was a
playable
little
on it
bit of a
though,
weird product. That is true
so that was
with the
unfortunate.
touchpad.
Yeah. Um, Also, your complaint about the battery thing, that could just be an issue they could solve if they just let it be user replaceable. The PSP did have a user replaceable battery, though it did use a proprietary battery, as if I understand. That's the thing. From what I've heard, it's more reliable for those batteries to be built in, like it affects that. But like you've said, we've shown that lithium-ion batteries, rechargeables, are swelling and eventually break inside the systems. Whether that's from charging or lack of charging. So it really only. I wonder if I should probably remove the battery from my Vita. At this point, the warranty's not a problem, but maybe I should look into just taking that battery out just so the Vita never fully dies. Or, yeah, so if I ever wanted to, I could re-hook it up, but just so it doesn't destroy the system in the process. So, yeah, that's something they could solve on the engineering problem. They just bite the bullet and just let us do it. Just let the users be able to adjust it so you don't have to deal with the warranty information. Just sell the batteries, whatever. Um, I did before we go, I did want to throw out some other positive stuff because you had on the doc an extra a point there about like remote play. So that was cool. Sony was like kind of pioneering remote play. Also, they pioneered share play, which is still a great feature, which is probably underutilized. Once again, streaming's not that great, and everyone has different infrastructure, has different internet lines. But I do love, for those who aren't aware, share play means that if you've got two people who have PlayStation, I think it's no, just the host has to have PlayStation Plus. But when both people are online, you can create a digital second controller, or you can pass your controller online and basically let your a friend remote in and play your game for up to an hour at a time. It just disconnects automatically after an hour. You can re-up, so it's like 1 hour at a time. But there's no like, I don't think there's really much of a waiting time between it. Or you can create a second controller for like games that have local multiplayer, and your friend can digitally play and streaming over that. It's kind of buggy, but the feature itself is really cool and reminds me of when Nintendo did download play, which we talked about on the previous episode. So Steam eventually adopted that as well, which was, it took them long enough, but that's great. I think share play is an amazing pioneering feature, and I hope they will continue to refine it and do more with it, and maybe figure out something with PlayStation Now for that to work better. The remote play is really cool. Once again, it's just streaming, but I could see that becoming something more and more prevalent, and something that could be a focus of PlayStation Now service in the long run. And I think it would also just serve Sony to partner with someone and create dedicated handheld to optimize for that experience to keep people in their ecosystem. It's and I don't expect Sony to fully go and make a switch where it's like our next console is a hybrid, but making that companion device or building it into like a special Sony tablet or something like that that can have controls and you can still sync up a DualSense or a DualShock 4 or whatnot would make a lot of sense for appealing to a demographic that overlaps with people who have it at home, but people who travel or have kids and want to do that, or like don't have have to share screen space in a smaller living area. It's that's, or a communal living area. That was what I was looking for. It could give them a lot more flexibility, and with the scalability of games these days being built in with the different performance modes, NVIDIA's DLSS, but the technology for dynamically adjusting the resolution to allow for better performance and better frame rates. Like there's ways to get around that stuff and get way more mileage out of it. Plus, we just have our mobile devices are getting better and better every year, and that tech, like, they don't have to adopt this year's tech. They could adopt like 2 or 3 years down the line, 2 or 3 years prior, start there and provide something like that. Would I buy a PlayStation phone? I thought about it before. I don't want just touch controls, but I've said I might have said it on the previous episode, but I've said it before. Is I want to see a clamshell that I can put my phone into, so I can just close it up, and then when I open it, it's got like my game controls on it. I don't want like the controller attachments. I don't want to carry around a DualShock or something. If there was like I could understand for like maybe a LAN party, I could do that where I was going to set that up. But I think all those like mobile things are clunky. And if Sony came up with their own solution for that, again, to turn phones into PlayStation phones or tablets, which they already, Apple finally has drivers for DualShocks. I don't know if they have it for DualSenses. I think Sony's got a lot of opportunities there for branching out of the market, and I think that's what we're all seeing is eventually these companies are going to be less can't afford to be as insular as they've been as long as they have. Xbox is kind of ahead of the curve on that with PC. Sony is slowly being dragged into the crossplay world. They are seeing the huge returns from putting their games on PC, and I wouldn't be surprised. Like they should put it on Steam, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do their own launcher or expand the PlayStation Now launcher to start doing that to keep people in their own ecosystem. And hopefully, it takes advantage of the PlayStation Plus subscription and they offer more value to it. But, Ed, you were making that point there that a lot of these services are just sucking up our money, not so much being there to add value. But I don't think they can afford to not add value at this time. Or as it goes forward, it's becoming less and less viable for them to not try to add value that way.
Yeah, well, I still think there's a lot of competition coming. I know you're not so sure about Steam being competition or the Steam Deck, but I think I could see more people being interested in PC after that. There's Game Pass and um I guess I'm kind of hopeful. I'm hopeful that these things could happen in the future, but I'm a bit of a optimist and dreamer. Like sometimes my expectations are a little far beyond what will actually happen, but I think I prefer to think like that than just to be like, it's never going to happen. Why
Oh,
why be
yeah.
so pessimistic about things?
Oh,
Some people just like to get mad at their platform to not going the way they want, but and so maybe I do that with Nintendo though, so I'm not always optimistic.
and I'm with you. Like I want to be optimistic, but I'm also not holding my breath. And that's how it has to be because or that's how I see it at this point. Is I would love to see these things. I think about what would be cool, but I don't get my hopes up too high, so that way when it doesn't deliver, and the Switch OLED's a big reminder of like the Switch, like Nintendo had a golden opportunity to do something really cool, and I should have like not put so much stock in that cool thing like being imminent. Um, but yeah, I think PlayStation has the ability to do these cool things. They just have to be. It's like any of these companies. They just have to be pushed that breaking point, and hopefully, a bit of internet pressure plus business, business sense coming through and being like, you can make money here. You can make a bit more money here. Stop trying to go for all of the money and just get more money, and eventually you'll have more enough money that it's quite a bit of a lot of the money. That's grow slowly, but grow smartly instead of trying to do the explosive bubble thing, which could tank your company. But yeah, that's the one thing is it feels like the industry is like in that weird pubescent phase where it's trying to run before it can crawl. And I'm one to talk about stuff like that. But it just seems so obvious. The answer seems so obvious. And especially in an industry that tries so hard to not tell us hard data that isn't like very positive and not very leading or biased, you start to see through the cracks and stuff, and it becomes frustrating that you could just do the good thing, and it's just a little less profitable than the other thing. It's you see the reasoning, and it's very disappointing. But yeah, I think Sony's still delivering a pretty decent product right now. And hopefully, as the chip shortage clears up, as the pandemic clears up and stuff, like the PlayStation 5s become more readily available and things keep going. And hopefully Sony smartens up. Competition forces Sony to be smarter. We hope everything there. And I think this interesting PC gaming, just to closing on that comment there, I think in general, like interest is still growing over time because it's becoming less and less mysterious, and especially with like the growth of Twitch streaming and stuff like that, there's just so much more visibility from people who took the time, learned how to do PC gaming, and brought it there and are demystifying it, putting out more information and more helpful from like, I used to not do this either, but here's how it goes, and that's exactly where I came from. And it isn't until you have someone who kind of shows you the ropes, and it becomes like a communal experience. So, I think I agree with you. The Steam Deck is a way for there. I'm just saying I'm not I am not sure how big an impact that will be, how much it's going to move the needle. I think it will move the needle, but how much is yet to be seen. And I'm excited to see how much it does. So that's where my head's at, to be a little more clear. What about you? What are your final thoughts for this episode today?
Um, I just say in general, this year has been wild with some really interesting announcements, especially
Mm-hmm.
this summer with the Steam Deck. Like that came out of nowhere. This last year with the like, there's been a lot of exciting news in this past year. And I guess I'm excited to see what comes next.
Same. Yeah, and yeah, we have a lot of criticisms, but that's just because we care and we want these things to be better. And the same thing, we hope we're being fair to all of them. So we hope that as listeners see, no one's crying like, "Oh, you're such a Nintendo fanboy." Although I guess we are a little bit more of a Nintendo fanboyish, but we do appreciate Sony. There's reasons we appreciate Xbox. We're going to talk about that on the next episode. Um, if as long as everything goes according to plan, the next episode will be about Xbox. Thank you again to all our listeners who are tuning in. And once again, we're on YouTube. We've just got ourselves on a bunch of podcasting places. So we are on Apple. So feel free to subscribe or just listen there or whatever. Drop likes, drop comments. We love it.
Or leave a review. Leave
Yep.
a review on Apple Podcast.
Leave reviews. We want to hear feedback. We're doing this for fun, but we're trying to get better to make sure it's a quality product. The fun here is us trying to get in depth on video games and really delve into these topics and kind of focus, and something I don't feel like I'm seeing in other podcast places. But I'm also interested in hearing about other podcasts that do something similar and really try to do deep dives on topics. But yeah, you can support us there right now if you want to subscribe and listen there and just check in. And we just hope you're having fun with us here. We've got plenty of topics going on. We're going to keep going. Once again, bi-weekly releases on Saturdays, both on YouTube and podcast streaming platforms. Streaming links are in the YouTube descriptions if you want to use that. Please subscribe to the Option Menu Crew channel on YouTube, and not so much my personal one anymore. We're trying to grow that one instead as we move forward, and eventually we want to do other additional Optional Menu Crew content, but that stuff's still in flux and whatnot. So thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we hope you are well, and talk to you next time.
Bye.